Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking at sources that detail a really difficult and sudden tragedy that unfolded in rural New South Wales. This is our deep dive into the catastrophic crash at the Walcha Motorcycle Rally. We're not just, reading headlines here. Our mission is to really zero in on the key facts of what happened, the human side of it, and the incredibly rapid response from the community and officials.
And to really set the scene for you, we are talking about Walcha. It's about 90 kilometers from Tamworth, and this all happened at the town's showgrounds during a demolition derby. But this wasn't just some standalone event. It's important to note this was kind of the big finale of the annual Walcha Motorcycle Rally.
Right, a huge community event.
Exactly. It's a cornerstone for them. We're talking a street procession, barrel racing, show and shine, the whole thing.
So it's a celebration that, in an instant, turned into a crisis. Let's get right into the specifics. What did the sources tell us about how the crash actually happened? The mechanism of it.
The sources are pretty clear on the sequence. The driver, a 27-year-old man, was in an on-track collision first.
So it wasn't just a random loss of control.
No, not at all. It happened immediately after that impact with another car. That's when his vehicle became, uncontrollable. It accelerated, went straight through the track's fence, and plowed right into the crowd in the grandstand.
That's terrifying. Just that progression from a controlled event to something completely unstoppable. And the focus then, of course, turns to the driver. What happened to him right after?
Well, standard procedure kicked in very quickly. He was treated right there at the scene by NSW Ambulance paramedics for what they said were minor injuries.
Right.
And then, importantly, he was taken to Walcha Hospital for mandatory testing. That's always protocol in a situation this severe, to rule out impairment or check for any underlying medical issues.
And this is where it gets more complex, because the official investigation runs on one track, but the family story, their immediate reaction, starts on another.
That's exactly right. A local derby driver, a man named Taylor Blake, he identified the driver as his brother, Stephen.
And he posted a video.
Yeah, a very emotional video. And in it, Taylor Blake's account is that it looked like his brother hit a car in the middle of the field, and then he says he might have blacked out.
Blacked out. That one phrase completely changes the potential narrative, doesn't it? It shifts focus from, say, mechanical failure towards a possible health event for the driver.
It complicates everything. You have the mandatory testing looking for one set of answers, substances and so on. But a claim of a blackout, that opens up a whole different line of inquiry for investigators.
And for the family, it's their way of trying to make sense of something that makes no sense.
Of course. It suggests it wasn't a deliberate error or negligence, and the emotional toll on his brother Taylor was just palpable in that video.
Yeah, he said something about not knowing if he could compete again.
He did. Said he was so shaken up by seeing it happen to his brother. It really highlights how personal these events are in small towns.
Absolutely. So let's move from the driver to the victims in the grandstand. The scale of this for a rural event is just staggering.
It is. A total of 13 people were injured, 13 rural motoring enthusiasts who were there to enjoy the day.
And getting care for 13 people in a rural setting, the logistics of that are immense, especially with reports of 2 people being in critical condition initially.
Correct. The 2 most severely hurt were a man in his 50s with spinal and hip injuries, and another man in his 30s with a serious head injury. Both of them needed immediate, high-level trauma care.
Which means an airlift.
A helicopter airlift, yeah. They were both flown to John Hunter Hospital in Newcastle.
And that's a huge coordination effort under the worst kind of time pressure. But the sources had some positive news pretty quickly, didn't they?
They did, and it's maybe the most remarkable part of this. By the Sunday morning, a hospital spokesperson confirmed that both men had been upgraded. Their condition had improved from critical to serious but stable.
That's incredible. Truly, that speaks volumes about the first responders on the scene.
It really does. But of course, the human toll was much wider. You still had the other 11 victims.
What do we know about them?
It was a huge age range, from people in their 20s all the way up to 75. And 6 of them were also classified with serious injuries.
So where do they all go?
They were dispersed, sent to hospitals in Armidale, Tamworth, and Walcha itself. It's a classic example of distributing the load so no single regional hospital gets overwhelmed. It shows a really high level of coordination.
And that kind of efficiency, it doesn't just happen. It often starts with people who are already there.
Exactly. And this is something federal member Barnaby Joyce pointed out. He made a point of publicly thanking the off-duty nurses and first responders who were just there as spectators.
Wow.
Yeah, people who just dropped everything and ran in to help. It's that quiet heroism you see in these tight-knit communities.
It really is. So once the immediate crisis, the medical response, starts to settle, the focus naturally shifts to the official reaction. What was the mood in Walcha the next day?
The local council mayor, Eric Noakes, he really summed it up. He said the atmosphere at the showground the next day was just pretty solemn.
I can only imagine.
He also mentioned that some of the injured were locals, which just makes it so much more painful for the whole town. From chaos to a kind of stunned silence.
And Mayor Noakes, he described the incident as a freak accident. He said, not excusing it, but you never see these things coming. That's a really interesting choice of words, isn't it? A freak accident.
It is, because on one hand, it's a very human way to process the unthinkable, to label it as something beyond anyone's control.
But on the other hand, it's a demolition derby. There's an inherent risk. Vehicles crashing is the entire point.
Precisely. So where do you draw the line between a freak accident and a predictable, even a very low probability risk? That's the question policymakers have to grapple with.
Does calling it a freak accident help the town cope emotionally? Or does it maybe get in the way of a really hard-nosed look at the safety protocols?
I think it does both. It offers some psychological comfort for sure. But the mayor, to his credit, didn't stop there. He immediately said that the council would certainly reassess their position on the rally.
So this tragedy has forced a policy pivot.
Absolutely.
Right.
This has been a 5-year event, a tradition. But now he's being very candid about needing to look closely at their risk analysis. Fences, spectator distance, everything is on the table now.
And this story, it resonated well beyond just Walcha. Right?
Oh, yes. The Australian Demolition Derby Association, they also made a public post. Their thoughts were with the injured and the community. It sent ripples through the whole motorsport world in Australia.
So when you pull all of these threads together, the family's emotional story, the incredible medical response, the mayor's reaction, what's the key takeaway here?
I think it's just this incredibly rapid timeline. You move from the shock and the freak accident label to very practical, immediate steps.
Mandatory testing, airlifts.
Right. And then the critical piece. The immediate pivot to a long-term reassessment of risk. It's a powerful, if painful, illustration of a community responding to disaster.
It really is. And that leaves us with a final provocative thought for you, the listener, to take away from this. Demolition derbies and events like them always carry some level of risk. So given that even with careful planning, officials can still face what they call a freak accident, how does a small community truly measure the cultural value of a beloved high-adrenaline tradition against its potential risk? Where do you draw that line between celebrating local culture and guaranteeing absolute safety? Something to think about as we wrap up our deep dive.